right, that's better. So today we're going to talk about personal monitoring system Me specifically. The last session that we had, we talked about different ways of handling personal monitoring. This one's going to focus specifically on the Heath Me personal monitoring system. We're going to look at some features and then go over programming. As always, the chat's running if anyone has questions, or you can chime in over your microphone. So the Me system, as I said, is a personal monitoring system. It's been out for a few years now from Heath. The components of this system are basically three. There is two different controllers and then a distribution switch. The Me 1 and Me 500 are obviously the controllers. They are their own mixers, and then the Me U is a distribution system, and we'll look at all these. The Me mixers, whether it's a Me 500 or a Me 1, as I said, the Me is its own mixer. It's receiving audio from the console, but all of the summing and mixing is done on the unit, within the unit itself. It just gets audio and channel names over the Ethernet connection. Me is a 40-channel protocol. So as you'll see on the Me 1, you've got 40 sources from the console plus 2 local sources. On the Me 500, it's limited to 16 sources, but it does use that same 40-channel protocol. Both units have local headphone and lineouts built in. That's a really strong and can be very loud headphone out. These units can be used with any Heath mixer, digital mixer, or can be used with any third-party manufacturer via Dante, Waves, Maddie, etc. if you have a Me U. And as we talked about before, these Me mixers are great for stationary musicians. The Me 1 is our flagship model. It's got 40 locally controlled channel and source levels and pans that would come from the console. These can be individual channels, they could be subgroups, they could be effects outs, basically anything you want. And then in addition to that, you've got a local line input. So if you wanted to have a click track or something like that, you can feed that right into the back of the unit. And then you also have a local Ambience mic, which is really nice. If someone wants to say something to you, you can just reach over and turn that Ambience mic up and leave your ears in. You can have up to 16 local groups. The great thing about this is that the groups can be built individually on each unit. So people don't have to argue about what's in their groups and how things are panned and those kinds of things. It's individual to each unit. The Me 1 has an OLED screen, shows channel name, channel levels, panning, those kinds of things. The channel names come over from the console automatically if you're using an Heath mixer. And then you've got local presets and USB presets, so it's very easy to save to a thumb drive and move those from unit to unit or for backup purposes. Both units can be powered by PoE, power over Ethernet, so you can have signal and cable, signal and power on one cable, or you can use a local wall wart power supply for each unit. Me 500, very similar, same chassis. The main differences are going to be that you've got 16 locally controlled sources versus the 42 on the Me 1. The sources are automatically assigned by the console patch, so it's very easy. There's no programming or anything like that to do. Grouping will be done at the console on this unit. There are no groups built locally. There is segment metering versus the OLED screen on the Me 1, and then as before, local and USB presets, and this unit can be PoE or locally powered. You can use daisy chain or star cabling for this, so you could go from the console into a Me 1 or Me 500 and then jump out to another one and then another one and another one. But you can also use a star configuration, which would be necessary if you're going to power the units with PoE. So you can use a third-party switch. It generally works fine if you have an unmanaged switch and it has enough voltage. But we do offer our Me U, which is a much more robust and powerful unit. This is basically a touring or enterprise grade 10-port PoE switch. It can feed sufficient voltage to all 10 ports simultaneously. So you can have 10 units. You can also jump from one MIU to another MIU. So you literally could have an unlimited number of MIUs fed off of one signal from the console. It's in a 2U steel chassis, rack mount, obviously. There are 10 EtherCon ports on board, and as I said, you've got full PoE voltage on all ports. The really neat thing about the MIU is that it has a card slot. So this card slot comes with the included MIDI card, which can connect to any Allen Heath digital mixer natively, or you can swap that card out for a Dante, Waves, MADI, etc. to connect to a third-party interface. So any of those protocols that do network audio can feed your ME systems. And then there's also a browser-based GUI for optional programming in this unit, which is really nice, especially if you are using, excuse me, especially if you are using a third-party like Dante. Then it gives you a very convenient place to do channel naming and things like that. If you're on an Allen Heath mixer, the channel names come over automatically, but on third-party protocol, that's not supported. So the web-based interface in the MIU makes that programming very convenient. So there is a link in port on every ME mixer, as I said, and that would be fed by a MIU or directly from the console. So those, either the link in port or the MIDI card, can connect directly to any Allen Heath mixer by CAT cable. On a D-Live, there is a dedicated ME port on the mix engine, so that's where you would connect that. On an Avantis, you would come out of an S-Link port. On an SQ, you would come out of an S-Link port or an S-Link card, which I didn't put on there, but if you have an option card for S-Link, you could come out of there as well. And then on Q, you're going to use either the D-Snake on the back of the mixer or the monitor port if you're using something like an AR2412. And then from the console, we're going to patch out. We've got options here. We can do channel direct outs. We could do tie lines, which is right off of the preamp. And then we can also do bus outs or effects engine outs. So any of those things can be patched to the MEs. One note on this, I generally don't recommend tie lines because you're coming straight off the preamp and it negates any processing. So you would have no EQ, compression, any of those kinds of things on that signal. I do see a lot of facilities use it this way, and while it works just fine, it doesn't give your musicians the best sources because you don't have any processing on a tie line. I also see a lot of people do direct out, and then they'll do direct out from the channel that is feeding front of house. So while this works, it's not ideal because the processing for a PA system is not going to be the same as what you're going to be doing as far as EQ decisions and things like that for someone wearing in-ears or headphones. So I like to see double patching where possible so that you have separate processing for the ME system and separate processing for the front of house mix, if you can do it. Most of our mixers have plenty of channels to allow that kind of double processing. So it's something to look at if you are using these. Okay, so that's the foundation of this. What I really want to get into is some programming on here. So I'll jump to that, and I'm going to switch over to this view. And this is a ME1 unit. So in the ME1, the programming is identical to what programming there is on a ME 500. The ME 500, as I said, doesn't need channel programming. It just auto assigns based on patch, but saving presets and things like that are the same. So when you get the unit, I factory defaulted this, so this is what it's going to look like. It's in its screensaver mode right now. So if I just touch a key here, it will go into the basic screen. So if I want to get into some programming, I would use the menu, and you can see above there's screen printed menu, and that's the screen printed ones above the buttons are triggered by the shift key. So if I hold shift and I go into the menu, then I can go up here. I can change the dimming of the OLED screen, but let's look at system setup. So I'm using this knob to select and to confirm. So turn to select and then push down to confirm. If I wanted to change the name of this config, which basically becomes the name of the unit, then I can push down here and then I can change the name. So I'm not going to go through doing this whole thing, but we can change this to key fault. How about that? And then we can just push master to come back out. And so in here also, I can import a configuration from USB or export to USB, and the USB port is right in the back here. So I can press master again to back out. I can mute the local mic in here if I want, and I can also reset the source list. If I go back by hitting master again, back to the main menu, what's really important in here is doing the key setup. So I've got 16 keys, and these, as I said, can be individual sources or they can be built as groups. So let's look at that. So if I push down on key setup, it asks me to press a key. I'd probably program key 1 first. So if I press key 1, then it's going to tell me right now source is set to kick. That's just, it's just assigned channel 1 to key 1 and channel 2 to key 2 by default. That's very nice. Maybe that's not what we want. So I could change the source. And again, this is for each unit. I could program one, save it on USB, and then load that to as many units as I want. But the great thing about this is that each player can have their own completely separate configuration. So it's in auto mode right now. That's the default, but I can also go down and I can see my list of inputs. And I didn't program these names in here. They came over automatically from the console. So I could make my key 1 guitar 4 instead of the kick drum if I wanted to. But the real power in this Me 1 is the ability to subgroup, as I said. So I can build my own group here. So I can go up to group and then go down to members and hit there. And then I can add kick and snare and hats and rack and floor and overhead and overhead. And I've just made a group. So I'm going to back out of there, and I would normally name this group drums, but again, I'm not going to spend all morning showing you how this keyboard works, but I'll change this to group 1 and then back out. And then, so now if I continue to back out, I'll get out of the menu and I'm in key fault, but if I press 1, then I've got my drums group here. And I can change the level of the overall group, but the real power here comes in if I push the group button, and then I can turn up each individual input and pan it separately. So I can get some kick drum going here, and then I can, if I wanted to have my kick drum only in my left ear for some odd reason, I could totally do that. And then I can move down and get some hi-hats and pan that the other way. Probably want a little snare. So I can do that. So you get the idea. You can build your own groups, and you can level and pan individually within them. So I would go along and just build my, as you can see, because we're in auto mode, it picked up after I quit with my first group. So I put all my drums in group 1. The next input in line was bass. So automatically, without me doing anything, it slid everything over so that now I've got my bass and my guitars. And so this is actually a really good programming setup. And I've really done very little programming. I do have some blank channels in my show file, which is what these ones are. But I think you get the idea. So now that I've programmed this key, I'd want to save this as a preset. And that's super easy. Again, using the shift key, you can see the screen print there. Hopefully you can see it. Says store preset. So if I hold shift and hit that one, then I can store it to USB if I wish, or I can store it to a key. So if I press 1, 1 is letting me know that there is a preset stored there. So I could store over it, or I could store on preset 2. And I can edit the name if I want by hitting edit, or I can just press it again to store it. But we can just go down here and change the name, and we'll change that to preset. And then if I press 2 again, then it will store that up. And now I've got that stored. So if I want to recall a preset quickly, I can just hit recall, and then I can press a key, or I can grab something from the USB here. I've got something called C on the USB, so I could recall that one by using my selector here and then pressing down, or I can just press 2, and then it says press again to recall, so I press 2 again, and it will recall that preset. So you've got very easily an easy way to get to up to 16 presets here. I can have many more on the USB. So that's the basic programming of this. There is a master section in here where you've got, if I hit the master button, I've got a 3-band parametric EQ, and I also have a limiter that I could set in here. As I mentioned before, we do have the local Ambience mic, which has its own dedicated port. The microphone is actually right here next to the shift key. And then you've got your master level. So that is the basic programming of the Me 1. As I said, the Me 500 doesn't require any channel programming. That happens automatically. But the saving of presets and USB offload and things like that are identical. So are there any questions on Me stuff or personal monitoring in general? And I did want to mention that these ideas are coming from all of you. So if there's anything that you would like Samantha or myself to do, please let us know. You're all in the on the email. You have our emails, or you can always reach out in the comments here. But we're going to keep doing these for a while. We do have a schedule online at AmericanMusicandSound.com where you can see what's going on with upcoming events. You will get the emails as well. But also, we would like to hear from you as far as what topics you would like to be covered. We've got a question from Isaac. Is there a plan to have software to set these up remotely? You can absolutely do that if you have a MeU. I think you're more talking about an offline editor. We've talked about it. I wouldn't say that it's an imminent thing. It would be a nice option. As with everything, Alan Heath, our products are all done by request and democracy. So the best thing to do is to go on the forum. If you go to alan-heath.com and go into the user groups in the forums and complain about it. That's how things get done in this family. And I think it's a great system because when people want them, we try and accommodate when there's enough demand for it. So Isaac, get on there and complain about it and try and get some people to back you up, and hopefully they can build that out for you. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, sorry, there's another question. There's some more questions. All right, what would cause a Me 1 to randomly lose its programming Unix connected to an Alan Heath hub? Not something that I see very often. It could be connected. You could have a cable failure. You could have a power surge that could cause the system to crash. So if you had an overvoltage situation, that could certainly happen. Obviously, a cable disruption. Those would be the most common things. I mean, the units, while they are very robust and stable, and it doesn't happen very often, any computer can crash, and so that could be another cause. So those are the things that I would look at for that. If it is a problem that you're having, especially if it's happening repeatedly, please contact our tech support and we'll work through that situation with you. Isaac asks, trying to organize Singer presets. From time to time they switch units, so it would help. Yeah, if you, having those on a USB key would be the way to do that. So you could have a USB key in each unit, or if you had one, you know, just hanging on a keychain somewhere, then anyone can grab any configuration from any unit at any time to be able to do that. And Kevin, yes, thank you, Kevin. If you see in the chat there, feature about the groups, you can turn all channels up and down within a group by holding Shift plus group at the same time and turn the jog wheel up and down. Thank you, Kevin. Let's see, from Sun, when you set up a group with a Me500 and channels slide down, does that give you access to more channels? You don't build groups in a Me500 like we just looked at. That is a Me1 feature. Any subgrouping for a Me500 has to be done in the mixer itself, and yes, it would. So you patch 16 sources from the console, and they automatically assign to the keys 1 through 16, and it will skip over anything empty and slide those down. So if you built a drum group at the mixer and you made that your Me source 1, that would automatically show up on the first Me1 source key. And then, you know, whatever you patch the 2, 3, so on and so forth, whether it be another bus or an individual channel, those would show up on subsequent channels. From Les, do you recommend that users keep their internal mic turned down during performances? Personally, I would, but it's a very individual thing. Some people like hearing all of the, you know, trash, basically, room reverberations. It does make it sound a little more live. If you were going to have it on all the time, I would probably recommend doing a dedicated stereo pair of ambience mics versus having this on all the time, because it is mono. While it is functional, especially for having conversations and things like that, because it is mono, it probably wouldn't be my preference to have on all the time. I do work with a lot of musicians that like a lot of ambience. It makes them feel like they're not stuck in in-ears, and you know, it just makes it feel more live, in air quotes. So that is a very personal thing, but again, I would recommend having dedicated audience mics for ambience that's going to be on all the time. And excuse me, somebody asked me the list price, and I don't know it by heart, so I'm trying to pull up my cheat sheet really quick before, so I can answer that question. Map price on a Me1 is $699, and on a Me500 is $449. So hopefully, thank you very much for anyone that's helped me out there. Let's see, Adam, I've had complaints from musicians, especially drummers. Yeah, drummers are tough. We love them, but that when mixing in front of house, it affects their mix. So yes, this this is going to be a product of where you send your pickoff point. So if you are sending them a group, and the group is sent post fader, then anything that you do at front of house is going to affect their mix. If you have your pickoff point is post all of your processing and you're noodling with the EQ and compressor, that's going to change their level and tonality. This is why, as I said, I highly recommend that you split your mixer and double channels where you can, and have a channel for front of house and a channel for monitors, whether it be for a Me system or otherwise. And then you've got separate processing, and you don't have to worry about anything that you do, decisions that you make for the PA system affecting their mix at all. It also allows you to EQ and compress specifically for small speakers, in-ears and headphones, which is much different than doing EQ especially, but all to compression to some degree for a big PA system. So that will, by splitting channels, and I'm not talking about putting up multiple microphones. It's very easy in a digital mixer to take one microphone and patch it to 2 channels. So you would patch it to channel 1 and channel 49 at the same time. And channel 1 would go to the PA for the audience or congregation, and then channel 49 would only go to the monitors. So yes, exactly. Let's see, just want to make sure I didn't miss any. In a previous session, you made a distinction between crowd mics and ambient mics. Should both be programmed into the Me 1? What I spoke about last time is that I don't do crowd mics. You certainly could. Again, this is going to be an individual thing. Whatever goes into the Me 1 is going to be what it takes to satisfy the requests and desires of your musician. So if you've got crowd and ambient mics and they want to be able to hear the crowd and the stage ambience, then that's what you should give them. So it really comes down to, what does your musician need to be most effective at their performance. So if you have all those things and they want to hear all those things, then absolutely, I would send them both. If they don't know, then I would probably just give them Ambience mics. As I said, I don't think that crowd mics are usually that necessary. Usually the crowd is in everything. It's in the vocal mics, it's in the overheads, it's certainly going to be in any Ambience mics that you have. So those are decisions that are made individually by situation. Every band, every room, those are all different. So learning the basic concepts is the important thing, and then adapting those concepts for each individual circumstance is where the real power comes in. It's got a question from Sun. Can you access Dante channels that may not be assigned to a channel on the board but are available on the network? Yes, you can on DLive, Avantis, and SQ, because they have the tie line feature, which allows you to route any input to any output. So Dante would be an input, and Me is just the same as any output path. So I can take something coming in from anywhere on the network. So on a DLive, we're talking over 800 channels that I have access to, and any one of those sources can be patched directly to the Me. Again, when you're using a tie line, and because it's not going into a channel, it's going directly from input to output, you don't have any control over that. You don't have control over the level. You don't have any EQ, compression, things like that. So it will be direct source to source. But if you have a clean source and you're comfortable with it, you certainly can pipe it directly from a Dante or other feed directly into the Me system. Great question. Any other questions? Going once, going twice? Okay, I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much for joining us. Please stay with us. And again, if there's